Let's see. I'll do a tricky one. My name's Emily again, and I'm wearing shoes.
My name's Stephanie. I'm the elementary principal, and I like to read. All right. I'm Michelle. I'm an instructional coach in Adventist, and I have children.
Oh my goodness! See, it really is a train wreck.
Why would think I knew a lot of people to get out.
So we say something about it.
Who you are, your husband.
I am Bobby Gothier. I work in childcare, and I do not like to leave the summer with
That's really moved for that.
Michelle, I'm the art teacher, and I have anxiety. No.
There you go.
Okay, my name's Jackie again, and I like to travel. Woo!
Oh, yeah. All right. Okay, we'll stop there. Go ahead and take a seat. Yeah. So you could do this activity with chairs. You could use paper plates. You can also do this not just for team building, but you can do it for content review too. So I could ask you a question about today, and if you felt confident that you could answer that question, you could get up and move. For example, I might say, if you know the name of both of your facilitators, go ahead and move spots. That was real. Yeah. Let's see who knows them. Okay, so the facilitators today are, do you remember names? Emily and Amy. Very good. Yep. So I could do math review. I could embed it into my content that way, and it's just a really fun way to start to get to know one another. So with that, we are going to start our proactive circle. And when we start a proactive circle, we have a centering activity. A centering activity could be a poem, like we have up there today. Could be a mindful minute. Could be a breathing exercise. Whatever works for your classroom. You'll notice in your Google folder, you will have some ideas of different things you can use. So today we're going to focus on your best. If you always try your best, then you'll never have to wonder about what you could have done if you'd summoned all your thunder. And if your best was not as good as you hoped it would be, you still could say, I gave today all that I had in me. That's how we're going to start our circle. With our circle, we have a talking piece. A talking piece is going to be something that is symbolic to your community, your class community. You might pick it out together. Last time I was here, I brought this cross that my mom gave to me, and so I brought this again. And so what we're going to do now for our circle is we're going to do our check-in part. So we're going to share our name, and for our check-in, we're going to share the last thing we ate and how we are feeling. So an example might be calm cookie, happy apple. So try to think, what was the last thing that you ate? How are you feeling right now? Take a second to think about it. And we'll do a sequential circle, which means that we'll pass the talking piece around the circle. The only person that has the talking piece is the person who's going to speak at that time. Okay? So my name's Emily, and I am Calm Cookie.
My name's Beth, and I am Excited Cookie.
My name is Abby, and I am Sleepy Sandwich.
I am Franny, and I am a
A pumped brownie. I'm Amy, and I am a slap happy salad.
I'm Jason. I'm a grateful cookie.
Stephanie, I am a excited salad.
Kathy, and I am a stressed cake.
Pam, and I am wanting more brownies.
Bobby, and I am baby cake. I'm Kayla, and I am eye-open. I'm Stephanie, and I'm grumbly onion. I'm Brittany, and I'm overwhelmed creative.
I'm Michelle. I am tired Snickers. I am Megan. I am sleepy Froggy.
And Marilyn, overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I'm Rusty. I am anxious Doritos.
I'm Jackie. I am tired watermelon.
I'm Emily, and I am overwhelmed salad. I'm Dee Dee, and I'm overwhelmed Twix.
Brittany, and I'm definitely an overwhelmed cookie.
I'm Michelle, and I'm a really full cake. I'm Becky, and I'm a very tired brownie.
I'm Brenda, and I'm a stuffed cake.
So doing those check-ins, we'll model another one tomorrow, but it's a really great way to see where your students are at. And so when we just did that, we heard some words like overwhelmed and anxious and tired. And so if you think about doing this in your classroom and you were to do that activity, what supports could you put in place? Or maybe you would have a sticky note where you're jotting down that student's name and you're checking in with them, and maybe you're going to see, has that changed throughout the day? Or you're going to have a conversation with them, or why are we feeling anxious, right? Because those are really real feelings that we have right now. We are feeling overwhelmed. We are feeling anxious. We know our students are going to feel that way too. So it's important that we have some sort of check-in. That particular check-in kind of made it fun. We had lots of laughs and giggles, right? Because it kind of took the seriousness off of that, even though those are some really serious feelings that some of us have right now. So think about how you can incorporate those into your classroom, and one way to do that is with a circle. So our sequential circle, we have our talking piece, as we talked about, and that's going to be something that's significant to your community. When we have that, we also want to make sure that we have a way to show agreement, because a lot of times when students are sharing and their voices are heard, they want to say, me too, that happened to me. And so what is a way that we can show them how to do that without using those words and taking away from the person's voice that is speaking at that time? Today, we're going to use snaps. If there's any sort of agreement when one of your colleagues shares something. Something else you can do, if you've ever used the Me Too sign, that's really popular for students to use if they're showing agreement, or you can use claps as well too. Okay? All right. We're going to go through our group norms. Just like we would have expectations, we would want to set up our circle with having norms, and we'll do the same today. We have our 3 B's. That means we want to be present, be mindful, and be open. We have avoid bringing technology into the circle so we can be fully present with one another. We want to support the learning of others, so we'll have some collaboration time. We'll be focusing a lot on community and that proactive piece of restorative practices today. We ask that you try to participate fully, even though we are feeling overwhelmed and anxious, and there's so much on your plates right now, and you have a lot to do to prepare for the school year. We hope that we can respect confidentiality. We would always ask our students to do the same. We try to say what happens in the circle stays in the circle, and then, of course, have fun together. Are there any other group norms that you would like to add today? I will give you access, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, did you, Amy? Okay, great.
There's another agenda for this afternoon. It doesn't want anyone to listen.
Yeah. So everything should be in there, and then we'll also take a moment to go through all of the different resources in your Google folder, too, for restorative practices. So when you're thinking about your group norms, just be mindful of the age of your students. You might want to have pictures that you include, and you might want to reference your talking piece and the importance of that and everyone's voice being heard. So think about what fits the needs of your students. Sometimes teachers like to develop their group norms together as a community, and sometimes teachers will come up with their own group norms. Okay, so just some quick housekeeping. We have our attention signal. We'll keep the same one from this morning. If you do need to use the restroom or get a drink, you may feel free to do that. Take care of your own needs, of course. Our binders are going to have a lot of the material, so you all have your own binders now, and you'll also have the Google folder with the electronic versions as well. And today we will be doing quite a few movement activities. So when we're thinking about this circle, we don't always need our chairs. Sometimes you can do a standing circle. Sometimes you can use paper plates too, just to start thinking about what that might look like in your own classroom. So let's just take a moment and think about why. Why do you think we started with train wreck and with that check-in? And for this one, we're going to use a non-sequential circle. So if you would like to speak, we will just pass the ball to you. We'll use this as our talking piece now. And then if somebody else would like to speak and share their ideas, they can pass the ball along. Would anybody like to start? Why do you think we started out this way? Just raise your hand if you want to add on.
This is why I choose things.
That's okay.
Directly under.
There you go. Right there.
Here we go.
I know.
I gotta remember what I was gonna say. To kind of mix up our seats too, because we're not around the same people. We ended up in different places.
Working with other people.
Roll it.
To get us moving around.
Also, I think it's good to kind of gauge like where your students are at. So we heard a lot of overwhelmed and tired and anxious. And a great sport for that would be like 30-minute nap time or something. We do have that.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. Thank you. So I heard a lot of movement, and in a moment we're going to have an activity where we learn about how that movement actually engages our brain. And I heard a lot about working with different people so that we can all become part of the community, right? And we started out having fun and laughing and also thinking about that check-in and how we can put those supports into place if we need to do that. Why do you think that might be important to start in a similar way with our students?
I think within our community building, we come from such different places, right? Like our students, like they come from high and low, but like we all can say, or like a lot of us can say, like, hey, I like U of M and I like MSU. I do the same game in Spanish class, but we do. I really like this more than that. And it's so great to see like things that we all have in common, and like that we can build community on those things and not other things.
And sometimes you just have to acknowledge the wait time, and you'll find that with your students too. Why else do you think we might start in a similar way with our students?
I think it's a way to engage them right away too and get them hooked and focused and ready to go.
It gives you the chance because like you played the game with us, that like you're putting everything into your class the same as they would too.
So a lot of that is finding out, what do we have in common? What do we have uncommon? How can we become that community? And the idea behind this is if we can laugh together and if we can build relationships together, that when harm is done, there is a relationship to repair, that we have relational trust. Because a lot of restorative practices that we will get into tomorrow has to do with when that harm is done. But we have to have that relationship and community first to repair when the harm is done, right? So we have to have times when we can laugh together, when we can be silly together, when we can play those games together. That is one way that we can do it. All right. So we are going to get into our first activity here using your binder. And I'm going to walk you through this, so don't move quite yet. in your binder, you will see that there is an article. Just move this way so I can show you all. And it's broken up. You have your implementation plan in the front, which we will get to. And then if you go to community building, which is the second tab, there is an article that says brain engagement, a look at chemical reactions in the classroom. And what you're going to do in just a moment is you'll do a hand-up, stand-up, pair-up to find a partner. And then you and that partner will find another partner group so that there's 4 of you all together. And then you need to decide who's going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you will see right here are the directions. Number 1, you will read the introduction and serotonin, and you'll see that that's bolded in your article. Number 2, you're going to do the introduction and cortisol. Number 3, you'll be reading the introduction and dopamine. And number 4, you will read the introduction and norepinephrine. And while you're reading your section, highlight, underline key points, and then your group of 4 will have a conversation of what were your big takeaways, what did you notice, how does this relate to building community in your own classroom, okay? What questions might you have before you begin? All right, so you're going to need your binder, so in just a moment I'll have you get your binder, and we're going to do a hand-up, stand-up, pair-up to find one partner. Once you have found, yeah?
I'm sorry to interrupt. How am I supposed to do this in a 50-minute class that I have once a week?
The circle or restorative practices all together?
All of it.
Yeah, that is a great question, and we can get to that, thinking about when you can use circles. You don't have to do them every day, and we'll show you some different schedules for that, too. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to see.
Yeah, it seems like a lot. Absolutely. Yep, it does. Yeah, so we'll show you some different options that you can use for your classroom, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Okay, any questions about the activity with the article? No? Okay. And it's right in that front part of community building. So go ahead and grab your binder. Do your hand up, stand up, pair up, find a partner. And then get into a group of 4. Yeah, find one partner group. Then find another partner group. So you've got 4 all together. Do you need a partner? Yep, you 2 could be partners. Perfect. Here you go. And then you just need to find another partner group. Are you 2 partners? Yeah, we're partners. Yep, so you could make a group of 4 right here. There you go.
Yeah. So can we do 5?
You can do a group of 5. Yeah, absolutely. You can just double up. That works. Yeah.
All right. So where are we going to go?
Yep, and just find a spot to sit. You can move the chairs around a bit. You can find a spot on the floor. All right, there's a group of 4 over here. Perfect. Okay. All right, there's just one group of 5. Good. No, but thank you.
You don't?
Well, why don't you grab me one? I do have my water bottle, but it's over there.
Difficult in I would love to have more space to right, but they also say, you know, that you can set the mood and improve or boost your serotonin by being positive and easy upticks. When you walk into the gym or to the dance room, just being really excited that they're there, then that makes them excited for
I had cortisol, priming the pump. This is, it's because it's the body's way of surviving. So it's kind of like the level would go higher if there's like stressors, whether those stressors are, you know, something physical or something. A lot of it would be peer relations. So it focused about focusing more time, especially at the beginning of the year, on the relationship between your peers.
Thank you.
Is very positive.
Oh, no, that's not bad.
No, they're not.
There's it's a little tricky with our setup here.
Just giving time for things to be together, like you said, kind of like creating that space and then the environment that we are within.
Mine was dopamine, so the pleasure center. It basically just talked about if students can release dopamine and be excited about what they're learning, they will learn better.
Home, something that's going on in the world. Just start off by
Are you all done?
I took this with the neutral zone, John Heiss, and he is the calmest man I've ever met in my life.
So I tell that to Jenny all the time. And I was like, do you have
She is very calm. She reminds me very similar. I have to like channel that when I do this.
And I am the exact pressure, but I was like, I'm not unhealthy.
I think you can bring that energy. Yes, I was trying to make it because that's what we experience. Yeah.
She's so kind of like, and so we balance each other really well with some of our presentations because I'm like, give me whatever that energy comes. Like, Lows and growth. I teach English and writing at Cornerstone University on the side.
You do?
Here you go.
And I love being able to do everything in my jammies at home.
Right. Right. Yeah, that is a perk.
It was so nice. Okay, so I think Lisa's working on the post. I'm like,
I made a little note for myself. Yeah. And that is a nice question. Right. Yeah. And I'll always use longer when you're facilitating because you're trying to walk them through every little piece. Yeah. I'm sure it's clear. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Right. Let's get it in there. Yeah.
MQ?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Every Monday morning I do it. Every Friday.
Right.
And within the week,
Yeah. The larger it's like,
I know, you answered that great.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Right. We will. The how, right? This is the,
This is the reality.
This is
How
the
does
why.
it actually
Yeah.
happen in 15 minutes?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let me show you. Tomorrow, and I think we need to bring that piece in tomorrow. Yep, so that's fine. I think she's art, yeah. Right. And I've got slides that we put in chant so they can just bring right over.
Yeah.
So I'll have to. Yep.
How often do you have your kids
Right. And I think as they look at their implementation plan, just kind of bopping around. If they have any questions, like try to plan it through. Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to have them share about the article because I plugged in Uncommon Common in there too, so they get one more community builder. And then they will get to review, do implementation plan, and then it's on you.
Okay.
Should be good.
And then it's on me.
And then it's on you.
I was just about to say, that sounds about right.
Like, how do I feel? And then I was just thinking about how, like, all this stuff was You know, like, like have those ready to go and say, hey, does that be compared to, you know.
Right, about 1 more minute to finish up with your group. All right, if you could head back to your spot in the circle, we will be ready to continue. You can bring your binder with you. Yes, head on back to the circle. All right, and if I could have your attention in 5, in 4, in 3, in 2, in 1, and 0. Sounded like you were having some really good conversation all about that why, thinking about how important this is to activate our brain. We're going to talk a little bit more about that proactive piece. Remember, our idea is to have that relationship built so that when harm is done, we have that relational trust that we can repair. So we've talked about games. We've experienced some games. We could do name games with that. That's always popular in the beginning of the year, to go around, maybe do an adjective or a verb to get to know one another and to build that community. Icebreakers, of course, can be incorporated not just in the beginning of the year, but in any part of your circle, those community builders, those icebreakers, those games. And in just a moment, you'll have a second to look through all of the ideas in your binder. Some of the energizers, we know that when we get our body moving, our brain's going to be primed and ready for learning. So that's up and moving, activities, a go noodle. All of those are going to help build that community too. Bonding and team building, thinking about how maybe you can group students differently, making sure that students are working with peers that maybe they don't naturally gravitate to. Finding commonalities. We talked about different sports teams and how can you relate that back to your students' interests so they can see what do they have in common, what's different. Thinking about how can we mix this into academics. So that train wreck game, when we gave you some review questions, how could you use that with other pieces of academics that you're using so it's not so isolated? All of these practices don't have to just be in the morning, but you can embed them throughout the day as well. Thinking about having some predictable and unpredictable celebrations, working towards a goal. That will be part of some classroom PBIS practices when we get to that piece that we'll talk about as well too. Laughing and smiling together. We started out doing that right away with train wreck as we were kind of running into one another and trying to frantically find a seat. We had a good time making sure that you purposely have that with your students every day so that that community is being built. Sharing positive news. That can be quickly done in the morning, at the end of the day. It might not be everybody. Maybe you have 3 people share on Monday. Maybe you have 5 people share one day. Whatever it looks like for your classroom to fit your needs. And then what are some other ideas that you might have? I heard lots of people saying in my classroom I do this, I try to do this in the beginning of the year. What are some things you might want to share with your colleagues? Yeah.
The first thing I do on the first day is a name game, but it's like a dancing one. So and it also does syllables. So I'd be like, I'm Mrs. Macri.
Very
and
cool.
All the kids will do it, and then we'll go around to the next kid, and they have to have a dance move with their name. So stuff, and then they make me try and do the dance.
Yeah, that does sound like fun. And with all of the TikTok dances, I'm sure that's really popular. Yes.
Break dancing on the carpet.
Yeah. Our bodies don't quite move the same way as our students. Yeah, but that's a really fun one. So we've got that energizer where we're going to get our brain going and a community builder. Thank you for sharing that.
So sometimes I'll do it with them, or we'll come up with I'll give them some options. I'll just give them
Yes. Yeah. That's a really great question. So as you look through the community builders, we want to make sure that we're thinking about that risk level, right? And how risky is something when we're first getting to know one another. Some of the activities that you'll see in just a minute, they are riskier, and it might take more of that community before our students feel safe enough to do that. Her answer was great. We would just walk alongside our students and have that with portion with them to support them. And it's always okay to say pass, right? Other ideas or things you'd like to share? Yeah.
Good one for the specials. You just gotta adjust it for larger classes. Share good things at the beginning.
Yeah.
For larger classes, though, you gotta do it in sections and make sure you report events. So it doesn't take more than 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's a great tip. So just making sure you're keeping track of who's had a turn, but you're still able to use that strategy within your specials class. Thank you. All right. Okay, so thinking about maintaining that positive community, we want to make sure that we're getting to know our students. Raise your hand if you do any sort of student interest inventory. Yeah, that's a great way to get to know your students in the beginning of the year. You can use those on Google Doc. You can do paper pencil, find out what their likes are, their dislikes. That's going to help you starting to build that relationship with your student. Thinking about sharing your time with your students. Going back to what Amy said, we know that that's what our students want. They want to be principal for an hour or teacher for an hour or have lunch. So how can you incorporate that into your day, right? Making sure that we're keeping things confidential. And we'll get into some shaming pieces tomorrow and how that relates to restorative practices, but really making sure that that trust is there. So thinking about grades or behaviors or conversations. How can you have that be confidential with your students to build that trust? Making sure that when we are working with our students that we're always modeling respect. Okay? Thinking about our individual student success. How can we help our students set goals for themselves and celebrate those goals as a class community? What does that look like in your classroom? Thinking about providing support when students make mistakes, building a culture where it's okay to make mistakes academically, make mistakes behaviorally. That's how we learn. And then, of course, thinking about fostering those positive student-to-student relationships and building community purposefully throughout your day, throughout your week. So with that, we are going to do another community builder. This is called Uncommon Common. You're going to find a partner that you haven't worked with yet today, and you are going to try to find the most uncommon common thing that you have with that person. So it wouldn't be that you are both teachers at MCC, right? Because that's pretty common. It might be that you both have an Uncle Bob that lives in Florida. So try to have a conversation and see what your most uncommon common thing is with your partner. We'll do our hand up, stand up, pair up again. Try to find a partner you haven't worked with yet today. Go ahead and put your hand up, stand up. Find a partner you haven't worked with yet. Find your uncommon common. Right. These are always fun to listen to. I love it when it's like, we dated the same guy in high school, but we had no idea. Or like, you know, right? Oh, yeah. Oh, we both dated. That's awesome. She dated him? Yep. What's his name? Oh, I think she told me about him too.
I cannot wait to be there with you guys. Like,
yeah, I know. Oh man, that's funny. Well, she's not alone because in Muskegon County, I also have that problem. So we were at Oak Ridge Middle School and High School, and one of my ex's brothers was on the Zoom virtually, and I was texting dinger. And I said, I'm in the same position as you. And then she tried to talk me into going face to face and facilitating something alone. I said, no, thank you. No, thank you. I didn't know what to do that. I said, would you want to go facilitate to Justin Ego or Scott Panazzo? Hello? Yeah. I don't want to do that. Yeah.
I don't want to do it with someone.
I don't want to do it. I know. No, thank you.
Sure.
I know.
It's okay to pass. I pass.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I know mine is in Lansing area. However, I did have one in the Chicago area.
Oh, did you?
Chicago.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, you're in town. Are they coming?
Oh
He came
no.
over to the house, and the next day sent me a text saying that it was too painful to see me.
Too
It had been
painful.
20 years.
Oh wow.
He was like, I don't think I can handle it.
Did he move on? Was he married? Oh boy.
This was just a few years ago.
Put it like
and I was
so.
like, okay. See ya.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Like, oh my gosh. Okay, so I am.
Yes, I'm going to have them share their uncommon comment because it'll take a
After
while.
this one, right? So I'm here.
Yep. So what was that one? Yeah, yep. So they still are going to have about 15 minutes to look through their binder so they can look at all the community builders. They're going to list them on sticky notes. I'll get a chart paper going that they can stick them on and then that's you. Yep.
And then I'm taking us to how much time do we have for the ending, for the toast? Did we say?
We did. Let's see here. Okay.
Oh, so how much time for the toes builder? My brave hands and feet present.
Oh, that's a great question too.
I don't think that's actually in there.
That's not in there.
Okay,
Oh, Vicki and I are so organized.
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
I
put my final touches on
we're
my
doing
last
mingle,
night.
mingle.
Just, you know.
Yeah. Nope, so we'll do mingle, mingle, and then screaming toe.
And I can go through these questions for Mingle Mingle Hockey.
Yeah. Yep,
What might be
right.
an alternate? I don't know what the alternate is to Mingle Mingle that Amy might have talked about. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, don't do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We took all of it. You may stop, and she's no longer here, so
Right.
there was nobody to
I
bounce
don't know.
off
I
of
know.
with. Yeah.
So I can end with the how would you use it in your class, and then we can end with the screaming test. So
Yep, and if you want to change the questions for Mingle Mingle, feel free to do that. Like if you want to bring it back to more like the community building, like
Sure.
yeah, you know, things that they will be easily able to converse about.
for sure. Okay. And then let's see. So we're gonna do a break because they're gonna finish this.
Yep.
Then we're gonna do that easy. Then we're gonna have a break, and then we're gonna end. I think I put the break. I think I moved it.
Oh yeah, that's fine. Okay. Yep.
I think I moved it to where it lined up with
All right. Hey, if you could head back with your partner and sit next to your partner in the circle. Find a spot next to your partner in the circle. Right. Do we need another seat?
That's her. You gave her one. You brought one down earlier.
Yeah, but just go me and just say Penny Thomas.
Oh, there you go.
I was like, I already have.
Thanks, Veronica.
Okay. All right, we are going to share our uncommon common. We'll use our talking piece. Would anyone like to start us off? And then we'll just do a sequential circle from there. Okay.
No, I'm uncommon, and we both sit on a helicopter ride in Hawaii.
Ooh, nice. I like it.
Okay. We common was we both send in with
We both have traveled to places
that are
5 time zones apart.
Yeah. That is an uncommon comment. You had some good conversation to find that out.
Ours is that both of our favorite color is turquoise, and our childhood bedrooms are both pink.
Our uncommon comment was that we both hate dusting.
I hate
Our uncommon comment is that we both like tacos with a hard shell in the center, the soft shell on the outside, and jack cheese.
That is so specific.
It took a long time to find something, let me tell you. So our uncommon comment was that we both have a dog. But this one I actually had two.
So our first uncommon comment is that he's the only person in this room that I was his teacher. And the other one is that he got married in the same church that my daughter did this summer.
We both have an Uncle Jeff and a cousin Trisha, and we both have immediate family graduating this year from MCC.
Ours was that I currently live in Newport and she lived in Pittsburgh.
Ours was we have both had purple hair at one time, and also we both played sports.
Yep. And then we found out, Stephanie and I, that we both play piano and we both like pizza.
Very cool. Thank you. All right. We've had some deep conversations, some of you, to get to some of those uncommon comments. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to give you a little bit of work time to look at the resources in your binder, because I know your time is precious, and before you know it, school will start. So if you could flip to the community building section, you'll see after the brain article, there's some different fun community building questions that you could use with students. And then there's some content from the neutral zone, and it gives you some information more about that why and how for community building. Feel free to look at that. And then there's lots of different community building activities that I'd like for you to look through. And remember when we talked about that risk level, you'll see with the community builders in here, it talks about if it's a low risk, if it's a high risk, if it's a name game, a get to know you, an energizer, a team builder, something to think deeply about, or a reflection. Yep. So it starts on page 14. And there's a whole list right in that community building section. You have to flip through a few. So go ahead and take a moment to look through your community builders, and if you could grab a sticky note and a writing utensil and look through maybe 3 or 4 that you would like to try, possibly tomorrow. You could list those on your sticky note, then we'll collect those. And then also on the front of your implementation plan for all of the parts of restorative practices that we will get through with our time together, that first section of community building says community building activities I will use and a timeline for implementation. So start to think about what might be some that you'd like to introduce with your students in the beginning of the year. What might be some that you will do once you have some of that trust built with your students. So just jot down some ideas there in that section of your implementation plan. Any questions before you begin? Just some quiet work time? Okay. All right. And I will let you look through those. Are they? So I can right over here. Did
you get a sticky?
Yeah. Oh. You know I forgot something.
We're writing things we want to do in
that you would like to try together, yes, 3 to 4. And then on your implementation plan, you're going to write some more that you would like to try on your own. So the sticky notes I'm going to collect so I can see which ones are the most popular, and then we'll be able to do those tomorrow. Yeah. Yeah, so they might be the same on your implementation, the same ones that you put on your sticky note. Yep. So good clarifying question. The sticky notes, that's where you're going to put your 3 to 4 that you'd like to try together. And then I'll collect those and we'll see which ones are most common and we'll try those out tomorrow. On your implementation plan, they might be the same activities that you've picked out. They might be different. Well, it's okay, but I mean, I knew you're the English. She's the English beautiful.
In so many senses of that word.
Yeah, and we'll just collect their sticky notes and put it on there. Just the place to organize. Right in the beginning.
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Perfect. Yeah. There's also an electronic version too, but it's kind of cumbersome to get your computers right now.
I know I was reading while scrolling and I was like, oh, that's kind of abstract for younger age.
Right.
So what did you
Perfect. Time to I love that. You make me feel so
like,
good.
Look, there we go, guys. I just got my T and my Y. I don't even know how I did it.
Keeping it real, Amy. Keeping it real.
Put an X on it. I thought about it. It's like a kindergarten. Where is the error in this word?
Yeah, there's no error.
Low, medium, and high risk.
Oh, good question. So remember, so low risk is kids are going to feel more safe, right? It's not as risky. And a little bit higher risk, they may have to put themselves out there a little bit more. Yeah. So you're going to want to think about when you're first starting to build that community, those low risk activities are great to start with. Because usually they're a little bit nervous, and then once that community has been built, you can kind of start some of those more medium or high risk activities.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, yeah, there's a lot. You do it. Yeah. Another really good question. You might have the same one, but somebody asked what's the difference between that low risk, the medium risk, and the high risk. Remember, the low risk is when your students are going to feel a little bit more safer to put themselves out there. That medium risk might be after some of that relational trust has been built. And then those higher risk ones are going to have to put themselves out there a little bit more. So think about what you would want to start your school year with. Okay. I'm glad you picked that out.
Without smiling, but it's smiling. Or they could do this.
We'll spend about 3 more minutes to try and get our ideas on our sticky note and add to our implementation plan in the front. Okay, about 1 more minute. Pass this off to you.
I'll just say they're doing that, right? It seems to be working still. That's fantastic.
All right, to honor your time, if I can have you back in 5, in 4, in 3, in 2, 1, 0. Just a moment, if you could bring your sticky notes up here and place them on our chart paper so we can look through and see which community builders were popular, so we can try those out with you. Hopefully you had a second to add some ideas to your implementation plan. We'll use that tomorrow and with our time with you. And then if you can just head back after you place your sticky note up here, we'll get ready to continue on. Go ahead and feel free to bring that sticky on up.
Thank you, ma'am.
So then I'll just use chart paper and we'll see if this is
For the whiteboard one? Okay.
No, grab a big.
Table groups for that. Are we going back in? Should I have them just? We're not using the circle again, are we? It's not necessary, so we can get the room right now.
Yeah, well, these are the ones that we were talking about.
So we're gonna disrupt your happy circle, and we're gonna put you. My turn. So you're going back to tables. So if we can put the tables back in place, then we're gonna go into an activity where you're gonna work with your group. All the workout minutes are coming right now, guys. All your steps and exercise. Go ahead. You don't want this one? Are you sure? If you change your mind, I'm happy to swap it for you. Still working. So you're going to have a piece of chart paper that you can use. You know, I'm all right with it. I know what I bring to the table. It's not calm. The chart paper. Look, you get to be the bearer of the chart paper. I'm going to explain it in just a moment. So right now you can just stick her up there somewhere. Well, you're going to have to write on it. So if you can make a space on your table for it. Maybe. Your guys' teeny tiny table is fantastic. Uh-oh. It's going to stick to each other again, isn't it?
We got bingos over here.
Woo-woo! Bingos! Tell me what you need for words.
We need wellness and assessment.
Oh, coming. All of it's coming. Oh, I said data-driven already. Yeah. I was going to say.
All right.
You've got some coming. No, if you've got bingos, get your prizes. Very important. Woohoo! It's like Jeopardy. Come on down. New talking stick. Aligns with your poster, maybe what you would add to that. Thoughts you have about how the video aligns with what your thinking was originally. And then we're going to come back together. Just a quick minute with your table. Okay? 1 minute, discuss poster, video, connection. Or people don't understand that that's where it comes from, you know? Same thing with ideas coming from the public sector. I'm like, yes, see, we can make these connections. And I think that was more like that connection. I know. Super fun. If I don't, you got it. I know, yeah, I don't think we did, yeah. Just so you know. That's fine.
She got that from IIRB and she loved it. She's like, hey, my carrots.
Peanut butter and jelly, peas and carrots, and then there's my kids who are like, I hate peas, give me all the carrots.
I know.
They're like, they don't go together. The peas go with nothing. All right, I'm going to ask you to close it up. Bring it back together in 5, 4. Coming back together in 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Okay, so just a couple people, if you'd share out what the connections were that you made. I heard a couple that were really good. What connections did you make, or new things did you learn from the video?
I read this summer with one of the tutors,
Yeah.
Spirit Air.
Yeah.
It was about the restorative justice.
Justice piece, yeah.
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 I guess I never put those two things together.
Yeah.
So I said, when that came out, I'm like, it was a huge light bulb. Oh.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? I heard you say that, so I was hoping you'd speak up. But it's very interesting to see how we've had these things in place. Like, I don't know if any of you know that, like, sometimes our prison systems and their capacity are based on our third grade reading scores, because we know that certain things are just connected to behavior like that. So when we look at this with restorative justice and how we've learned about different ways to restore harm and to actually restore the person into right standing, it's the same kind of concept, but we're taking it into this environment. I was telling Emily, like, it's the same as like talking about public health sector and MTSS. It gets me super pumped, probably in a really geeky way. So you're welcome for that. I get really geeked out about weird things. So yeah, that's one of the big takeaways, I think, from this video, too, is that connection with what we see across the restorative justice. We had a training in our county with the police officers and people who were doing, like, de-escalation trainings in schools, and that connection was so powerful. We actually learned a lot of our de-escalation techniques with stances were also very similar to how a cop stands when they grab their gun. So for a student, when you do that stance, they can all of a sudden be triggered if they've experienced a cop leaning for their gun. So it was very interesting to learn, and it was very powerful for those agencies to work together. So we trying to learn from each other and grow and get better and just get better at supporting our students. Yeah. What else? Who's uncomfortable right now? Anything? Oh, you want to speak? Please. You're like, no, please don't make me do it. Any other connections between your poster and the video? Maybe something that you saw that was confirming around what you were thinking about restorative practices?
The opposite. We were talking about how we did not have the piece of, like, we had, like, communication and community, but we did not have, like, improving culture. And we noticed, like, kids have classroom culture and environment, and so that was something we kind of, well, we had part of it, but we didn't probably the important part of that culture.
Well, and all those things kind of that's like you need those things to improve the culture. Yeah. Very good. I won't do any more awkward silence with you, okay? So when we talk about PBIS, we really get back to, so we saw this morning when we talk about how those outcomes are centered within this systems, data, and practices working together. And we're really trying to get to where we have that positive climate and culture. Our students have that, again, going back to that implementation science slide, they have to have that host environment, so they have to have the environment to learn. It's the same kind of thing that exists for them. So we want to make sure that the practices we're putting in place for them are actually providing that safe environment for them to learn and grow and become really positive, productive human beings, make the best of their lives, and be happy. Like it's such a big piece, and I know we're hearing a lot of that right now about joy. For our students to be able to find joy and happiness in their life, and it won't look exactly like what we think it's going to look like for them. So some kids are going to find joy in things that we would be like, my gosh, that would not be my joy. But it is their joy, and that's what we want to help them find. So we want to make sure that we have that PBIS system, because that's what helps us organize all of those pieces together. And we'll use systems and data along with our practices. So what we find is when we get into these, so this is kind of just pulling that graphic out for you. When we get into these pieces, our data helps us to make that positive decision making, if you haven't got that on your bingo thing yet. It also gives us the supporting staff behavior with the systems. So systems are set up to support staff to actually do the practices. The practices support our students, and we use all of that together to get those outcomes of the social competence and academic achievement. So that's how it all works together. And then restorative practices falls in as a practice, right? So that's where it falls within our big, larger scheme of how we're going to get to those outcomes that we're working for. Making sense? Connecting a couple of dots. So what is it when people say that they don't agree with or like PBIS? Oftentimes we hear these words being said.
when we talk about data, practices, and systems, we're really talking about melding together those pieces to produce those positive pro-social outcomes for our students. And when people say that they don't agree with PBIS, I'm sure some of you have heard this before. What are they generally saying? Just go ahead and shout it out.
That we shouldn't reward kids for doing what they should already be doing.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's generally what they're saying. We shouldn't reward kids for things that they should already know how to do, right? So that's a big argument we hear, and it's the biggest reason that staff don't buy into doing this work, especially, can I say it out loud? I was a secondary teacher, especially in secondary schools. For some reason, we just, our training doesn't cater to child development at the same way that the elementary training does. So when you get into secondary schools, we hear that more often than not, that, oh, we're rewarding things, they should already know how to do it. I feel like I can mock them a little bit because I was one of them, but don't tell them. So oftentimes they're getting at these little nitpicky pieces around the practices that we're putting into place rather than looking at the full picture of what PBIS is. PBIS is not like, what did you say earlier, Emily? Hugs and dismissing behavior, like we're excusing bad behavior and we're just giving them hugs and rainbows and butterflies. That's not what it is. There's that continuum of responses. We are going to respond to their behavior, and they need to know that when that behavior is inappropriate. If you hit another kid, there will be a consequence, right? It's not that there's no consequences. It's understanding that we also know behavior is a symptom.
We address the symptoms, so there's those underlying pieces that cause those things to happen, and then how do we restore, when we get into restorative practice, how do we restore the relationship and the community that was built within that? Does that make sense? Yeah. So you've seen this already, so I'm not going to go through the whole big thing around the triangles because if anyone's counting, this is the fourth slide with triangles on it for you today. So we've got those tier 1 practices. Everyone receives that. It's a whole school model. We've got tier 2 layered on top for those that need a little extra. We've got tier 3 layered on top for those that need a little more intensive support, right? So when we look at the different pieces that we have in place, you're going to find that all of these pieces are color-coded green for a reason, and that's because every student can benefit from those practices. So we've got SEL at tier 1, so we've already seen random acts of kindness, or SEL, the social emotional learning. Sorry, if I do that, tell me, because sometimes I just like randomly spit out acronyms. Restorative practices, which is also here at RP. So restorative practices is one that we would do with all students, because it's all around that community building. It's all around, having that repair of harm when things happen. And then trauma-informed practices, this is going to be something that's going to be crucial this year with all of the trauma that students have experienced and continue to experience in the midst of just a very feeling tumultuous landscape that we're in right now. That's my way of saying it. Bullying prevention, that's always good for kids. This is social skill. How do you not pick on others just because you were picked on? Let's not do it to others. How do you stand up for your friends when things are going on in a positive way that doesn't cause harm? That's hard too, right? And then Cham's really getting into that piece where we're setting expectations. These are all for every single kid in every single area. There's no need to say that it's only for some. This is something every single kid can benefit from. And so you see these things. So this is Champaign School District, and this is in Garden Hills, which I think that's Illinois, if I'm correct with what I'm saying with my words. I think it's in Illinois. We like to steal really good things from other places, so that oftentimes pops up. So you can see what they have in here. They've got these are their tier 1 supports they have in place. These are their tier 2, and these are their tier 3. The items that are in red are the pieces of restorative practices that they're doing at each tier of the system. So when you look at tier 1, they have restorative chats in the classroom area. They have circles. Sometimes, Emily and I were talking about different practices, and especially thinking about scheduling and what makes sense for you. Sometimes it's about, we have a Monday morning circle and we have a Friday afternoon circle. So we start and we end our week together, depending on what you have for time. In between, though, you can have those chats. So you can have conversations. You can continue to pull on the skills that you're trying to build within those circle times throughout your day. So reminding them of some of that SEL content, which also is aligned really well with your restorative practices work. Pulling that into everyday activities can be the way that you continue to foster that community and that environment. Your tier 2 version of that is really those pieces where, and a lot of you probably do pieces of this already. So it's a matter of putting the intentionality behind it and understanding where the research behind it is and what are the different skills and practices that we can do within it. So the restorative chats outside of class, if you find that something happened, let's fix it. Let's talk about it. Let's keep community. Let's keep building that relationship. And sometimes building relationships, I don't know how many of
And then you often have an explosion, right? It just bubbles right up until the point where you're like, ah. So we don't want that to happen. So let's address it and let's have those chats. The big thing with PBIS that we always say is that we praise publicly and then we have those type of chats privately. So if we're going to have any kind of conversation that might feel punitive or corrective in any way, do it privately so there's no shaming. We don't want anyone to feel shamed or feel exposed or vulnerable when they haven't chosen to be exposed or vulnerable. We want them to have that choice. So we want to make sure outside of class or outside of the full group that we're doing those types of things. And then we have restorative conferencing, which is really more intense, and there are specifics around how to do these things really well that you'll get training on, so you'll feel really confident. So that's kind of the model that they have. You can see all the blue stuff and all the other stuff that they're doing for social emotional behavior support. The red is your restorative practices. Any questions? Emily, anything you want to add?
No, that was all fun. Thank you for explaining it.
Thank you. So restorative practices and our school-wide PBIS is really that shift that we focus in on that community and the relationship piece. We know that that's huge within any behavioral support work. We want to make sure everyone feels connected, they feel valued, they feel their voices heard, and that all happens through this. So we use that systems, data, and practices. So we build and we repair. So we're going to build that community. So kind of like Emily was saying in the beginning, we started with that circle just to build community. If you don't have community to start with, you're really not repairing anything when you go in to do the repair. You have to have something to start with so that we can do the repair. So if there is nothing there in the groundwork, the first thing to do is to build. And then we move into repair. So the big pieces are making sure that we have those foundations, the explicit skills development. How do I explicitly teach you? And sometimes it's a matter of like really saying, how do you think that felt for this person? Getting them to get outside of their own emotions and their own thoughts about how something went. So when you're conversing with a student, making sure they can switch and feel the other side of things. And that's challenging. So we have scripts and we have lots of things that you can use that would practice and be helpful for you. So the pre-skills necessary, so there's some pre-skills that is necessary, and a lot of that's going to come and coincide with your random active practice and social skills as well. Alignment and integration, so making sure that we are intentional, which I think I already said, right? To make sure that you're intentional about using it. Most of you do these types of things already in practices, and it's that let's make it intentional, let's make it systematic, let's make it a common culture practice that we're using in our classroom. So we have a table discussion within your, do you know where it's at in the binder, the document? Is it the one that they already read that they're supposed to have out?
Under implementation, yeah, right now.
Okay. So as far as the documents that they're supposed to refer to, there's something that I need to read. So it's just pulling from the previous stuff. Okay. Just want to make sure I'm sure. So what you're going to do is you're going to think about how restorative practices would fit within your current practices, and then on the bottom part, how we might start integrating those within our system. So think about your Tier 1 practices specifically at your classroom level. How could you integrate some of this into your classroom? If you're concerned about scheduling, try to think of things in a larger scale. Like, so instead of thinking about the day, or I know we had a comment about 15 minutes in the day, think about that larger time frame that you get with the students. So think about the week, or think about the month. How can you infuse these pieces in, and then what are those little things that you can do throughout the hour or throughout the time that you have them? I know with specials it can be very challenging when you have different groups coming in each time. So just try and think about the ways that you can start and end, or maybe incorporate it at the beginning and then touch on it in those other points throughout the year. So first one, how does it fit within your building PBIS framework? And then the second one, how could you begin to implement those practices, integrate them within the tiers? So how does it fit with your current framework? How could you implement it within the tiers? Everybody with me? And you do have an implementation plan at the front of your book that you can use to document some of this as well. Feel free to work with those around you. You don't have to do this independently. Okay? Take about 5 minutes.
We're almost there.
Practices helps us find new and different ways to implement that into our teaching.
Oh, good. Awesome. That's great. Look at, we don't need anybody else to say anything. Feels like an A+ response right there. See, I said 1. You just went and took it all the way to 10. Very good. So that's, and another strategy that you can use to continue with building those relationships and continue fostering that positive planning culture. Awesome. Feels really good. So what I'm going to have you do in your participant folder in Google, it is not inside of a folder. It is in the main participant materials folder, and it's, I believe, all the way at the bottom. And it might say copy this stuff, right? I think it says copy. There is a survey there for you to take. So it looks kind of like there's a lot going on at the top, but then once you get past some of those top pieces, it's just kind of some reading for you to read about some things. The bottom part there has questions for you to consider. This is done individually, so you're doing it all on your own, and it's a personal reflection. You will not be sharing this with anyone. It is just for you. It's a way for you to identify your areas of strength and maybe areas of improvement when it comes to restorative practices. So go ahead and dig into that. If we're going to have you take that real quick, it shouldn't take you more than 10-ish minutes. I'm hoping a little bit less, but we'll see. Yes, yes, I will. Let me show you with my computer.
If you need help making a copy, just raise your hand. We can come around and help you do that.
So here in your the main participant folder right here, you should be able to scroll right down to the bottom, and it says copy of restorative mindset and survey. So that is the survey that you would be looking at. Yep, if you make a copy of it, you can then highlight, make notes, whatever is easiest for you.
Go to the file.
Go under file.
Does anyone need help getting to the survey?
And then what would I share it? No. So just like we have to share it? Yeah, okay. No, it was completely, to the go back one, it wasn't in a folder. It's that way. Yeah. I don't know.
You're welcome. Just yours. If by chance you made a copy and it went into the same folder, just know that it's in the same folder with all the participants, and you can actually move that out into your drive if you need help with that. Anyone else need help getting to that survey? Okay. Once you get it open, the top part is just some reading, and then you'll dig into the survey with questions. Just highlight which answer you think is yours. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Can you hold up like a fist and five for how many minutes you might need? Look at all these. This. You guys were so quiet. I thought you were still taking it. That was Trixie on your part, I think. Yeah. Just don't start talking. She won't. Okay, so the purpose of that survey is A, to give you guys a chance to kind of look at what those different mindset pieces might be, and B, to help you identify where your strengths might be and where some areas to focus on might be. So that's only for you. Use it as you would want. Nobody else needs to see it. It's all for your own growth and your own learning. So we wanted to just provide that for you for that reason. We had a break scheduled in, however, it's 2:45, and I fear we're going to run out of time, and you all seem to have really wanted to do Mingle Mingle. So we're going to do Mingle Mingle today, right now, so that you guys can see it. We try to make sure you get to experience some of these things that you're interested in. So pretend like that break slide didn't just show up. If you do need to go potty or something, please feel free, but we are going to do Mingle Mingle. There's no need to do a circle. We can do it without circle. You guys can do it within this area. So what happens is, actually, Emily, will you describe it? I'll have music ready, but I think you're better at this.
Yeah, so Amy's going to play some music, and we are going to move around the room, and then when Amy stops her music, we're going to find a partner nearby us, and she's going to give us a prompt or a question to discuss with our partner. And once she sees that we've had some discussion, she will play her music again, we will start to mingle, she will pause the music, we'll find a new partner, and have a new discussion prompt. Okay, does that make sense?
Is it just one partner? Because I think the directions said you say number.
So we're going to just do one for now so you can experience that, but just know that you could stop the music and say 4, and then 4 people get together. You can do it that way, but if you guys just find one for now, my fear is we don't have loud enough equipment right now, but I didn't bring a speaker for some reason, my brain just didn't think of it. So we're using my phone for it, so I'm going to blast it as loud as possible in the center of the room, which will not be as loud as your conversation. So, guaranteed. So I'm going to try and work it out. Usually I have a really loud speaker for you. So if you would like to go ahead and stand. Are there any questions about the directions? Okay, so you're just going to find one partner for this round. And I'm going to play a song, and I'm going to make it very appropriate for you. So go ahead, and you just keep walking until the music stops. Just keep dancing, yep. She's dancing. No, she was dancing. Oh, not me. Listen up. All right, find a partner, just one. And the question you need to focus on. If by chance there's a triad, just go ahead, it's fine.
Oh, there will be because I don't.
All right, so the question is, what are your biggest takeaways today so far? So discuss that with your partner, and then listen for the music. I'll try and pick a lot of music.
I'm going around this way.
All right, your question is, what is the difference between restorative practices and restorative justice? builder are you most interested in implementing in your classroom? Looking at my running shoes, I hate running, just so you know, so I need to have very big, high energy cardio to even begin to slowly jog, as I call them.
I'm still walking around.
All right, so that is just one activity that you could use with your students. It's a similar thing. You could integrate any other type of question. Kids love music, so doing something. So doing something with music, especially with their kind of music, is really fun for them because they get excited about what the next song you're going to play is, and they know that they engage in the conversation, and then they wait. So like my kids are right now listening to this song. So I have 9, 12, and 15 at home. All the parents are welcome. All girls. And right now, it's a lot of hormones in my house right now. Right now the song is It's Raining Tacos. Have you all heard this or a song? Oh, and then there's a song that like goes on forever. Like it's like 10 hours or something. So that's being played, like we have multiple little Alexa devices in the bathroom, all at the same time. Raining Tacos, the 10-hour song. I'm like, so it's a fun thing that you can play with your students. They do get super excited about the music. And you can integrate questions about whatever it is that you're doing. You can make them fun. You can kind of swap it up and have them talk about lots of different things. So however you let's try to do that.
This homework is a great way to embed that academic content. We're thinking about how can we fit these practices in throughout the day. And so that easily could be applied to math, to reading, to science, to social studies, to any content at all, just like we did with some review of our restorative practices.
So I'm going to let you read these rather than me read them to you. So go ahead and read these slides. One slide. Oh, sorry. And this way. So when you read these quotes, what's something that stands out to you in terms of how this will work with your students and with your practices with your students? What's something that stands out?
The first one I really love, with bottom line, is that the changing their behavior with the position of burden to lead with them rather than do it for them. And I'm a person, I'm very particular on how I think of them, and even with my own kids, but if I let them do it and the students do it, they take more ownership and pride in what they do.
Yeah, for sure. So tomorrow you actually have some really great stuff. I was hoping to be here tomorrow, but you've got some really great stuff that's going to be just about that topic, about doing things with, not to, not for, not. So we kind of saw that today with the different teaching styles and what works, and that with is that coaching and it makes all the difference. Yeah, I love that. That's one of my favorites too on that one. What else? Yeah.
I like some bottom line stuff, believing in students. I think students and schools like their job, and so it means that they want to, and then I think they think we don't believe them.
Yep. Yep.
Because we are in a position of authority, and we're just always giving them more to do.
Yep.
But not enough praise and conflict.
It's so interesting to me, like that idea of they're going to rise to the expectation that we have for them. So when we believe in them, and I love that part too, and especially when we're having trouble, when things seem to not be going well, they need to know you believe in them. In that moment, more than any other moment, they need to know you believe in them, because that's what's going to help them to make that better choice. If they think your expectation is that this is what you're seeing is who they are, that's exactly what you'll continue to get. It's a big, big deal. So the traditional approach really is what happened, who are we gonna point the finger out on this one, and then what is the punishment that I need to put in place so that we make sure that you get a consequence for your action, right? That's a traditional thing that we have. You might even hear your students or parents say this to you, or the families of your students say this to you, like, well, who did it? Whose fault is it? What happened? Who did it? And who's getting the punishment? It's kind of that natural thing we go to in our mind, right? That restorative approach is a slight shift, right? So it's what happened, what's the harm that's resulted of that, and how do we repair it so we can get back to our community? So it's a different lens, very similar, but it's that shift in thinking from who's getting in trouble to how can we right this relationship in this community. And it's a huge difference when it comes to how the student comes back. So we hear lots of stuff around students are suspended for their poor behavior. For the students that didn't want to be here to begin with, they're like, woohoo, right? Like, let's do that again because I get to go home and do whatever I want. Whereas when we look at it as, okay, this is what happened, but this is what we need to do to get back in the community with one another, and we approach it differently, that student then, it's a serious learning moment for them. I had a student once that threw death in my class. I love her. I actually still have run into her when I'm in Lincoln. She's amazing. I still run into her every once in a while, and it is a joy to see her. I loved her in that moment. Like, she was one of my favorites. But, one day I had that day and threw like 5 desks. Just went, bam, bam, bam. And I was like, oh my gosh. We should probably have a conversation. The whole class is watching, what is Mrs. Henry going to do? And I just kind of stood for a second, like, okay, what do I do? But if I would have approached her with, that's it, get out, you're being suspended, although some of that was out of my hands, but my approach to her was more, hey, and how can I help you, and what has happened that has caused you to be angry with my dad? Because it really felt out of nowhere, I didn't understand. But that idea that coming at her with a punishment in the midst of that behavior, which was 100% a symptom of something else that was going on, that doesn't restore anything for her community-wise with her peers, who sat there and watched her, and some were genuinely frightened to coming back into the classroom after that. How do you come back into the classroom after that? So how do we restore that relationship, repair that harm, so that she can then regain that spot in the community and be a part of that classroom? That's an extreme example. Obviously we can have much milder things happen, right? But we need to make sure that we're looking at it in a restorative manner. So really that aim of our restorative approach is looking at we know conflict will happen. We know it's going to be there. It's not like, we have relationships with people. We are not identical. And sometimes when we are, it's even more conflict, right? So we know that conflict will happen. So we want to make sure that 80% is spent on building community so that we already have something that we feel valued and a part of, and that others value us being a part of. And then that 20% spent on repairing harm when it happens. Because we know it's going to happen. But if we've got that strong sense of community, the repairing of the harm actually doesn't take as long because we have a care and a love for that community. So restorative practice is really a preventative response. It's 3 o'clock, so I want to just quickly talk you through this. This is that informal approach, which is like those circles, sort of like what we did today. We had some conversations. We can get into some of the stuff you're going to see tomorrow, so you're going to learn about affective statements and things like that, and that use of our words and how it can make a huge impact. Impromptu conversations kind of gets into that tier 2 piece a little bit that we had talked about earlier. We're starting to have these kind of like we need to make sure to make sure we're repairing the harm in a really productive way. And then that would be our triangle. Oh, triangle number 5. So yeah, exactly. 6. You're right. It is number 6. So we have lots of triangles for you, and you're welcome. So that's that 80%. That's that 20%. You can kind of see it on that continuum. So you can see how it goes. You should have all of these slides linked in. These are some things we're going to talk about tomorrow, or actually Emily and Vicki are going to talk about tomorrow. You'll really enjoy it. Again, so Vicki's that secondary person, so we're talking about like just the differences in presentation styles and all the fun that we get to have as a team. So you'll have elementary and secondary perspective again tomorrow. We were going to do streaming till it's 3 o'clock, and we love you all, and nobody wants to stay and hang out for that, so you'll probably get to do that tomorrow.
Tomorrow, if you could bring your Chromebooks or laptop and your folders. Greatly appreciated.
All right. I just found out our internet is being changed by the lovely Amanda. They're coming in and replacing all of our internet, so that is running much, much smoother because we have it patched and it doesn't run well, as you all know, right, during the school year. So they are coming in and redoing and updating our whole system. We have hotspots we will use. However, if you need things printed, print them today because our printers are on the internet, right? So you're going to have to literally go plug your computer in to the printer to print today. After today. If you have today still, we're going to have internet because we have hotspots that we can use for internet. But as far as printing goes, if you want to print things, print them today. Yes, they're starting in the high school tomorrow, and they'll work their way down. Okay? The other option was to have no internet the first couple weeks of school. That's not the rule, right? So this is our best case scenario. Still not great, but better than the first 2 weeks of school. So if you need to print something, print it today. You can still make copies from the machine, but print today. Are we keeping these posters? Yeah, keep those right next to the table. Or if you want to, I can hold it out. I set mine up. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
We're pretty squashed at the table anyway.
know, it's so fantastic.